Hello, welcome back to Bangla with Desinysus. I think many of you may have noticed, but I would like to point it out. I am shirtless today. I say welcome back, but really I am restarting this series from scratch. I won't go over the reasons why, because I've already put that on a community post, but I do want to take a moment to go over some disclaimers. If you want to get to the content right away, then head to this time in the video. Let me get this out the way early on. I have no, and I cannot stress this enough, no qualifications to teach Bangla, or any other language, or anything really. That's not gonna stop me, obviously. Now, as for why you should watch my videos, I am shirtless today, did I mention that? Oh, and sometimes I'll share some stories from high school.
You do not want to miss those.
Anyways, getting serious again. This series is only an explanation of how Bangla works. I am not going to teach you what you need to speak the language. Like I said, I have no qualification to do so, nor any actual intention. Think of it like I'm giving you a tour. Tour. Lastly, before we move on, in this series I'll be using a few example sentences to understand the grammar. And when providing a translation, it may not be word for word. Instead, it may be more based on vibes. If you're bilingual, you feel me. Disclaimers aside, now let's get to the content. The first part of this series will go over the grammar, starting with this video. When we talk about grammar, the main thing that we discuss is morphology, word construction. In this sense, we can classify Bangla as a fusional language.
Hang on, fusional language, what the farce?
In different languages, words can have different amounts of information built into them. A more analytic language will prefer to have less information in a word and have more strict word order, while a more synthetic language will prefer inflections, changing the word itself for more context. As in, you could take the word out of a sentence and you'll still know what it's doing there. Keep in mind that the terms analytic and synthetic are relative to each other. No language is completely one or the other, but there are some languages that are on extreme ends. On the analytic side, that would be the isolating languages, and on the synthetic side, it would be the polysynthetic languages. But that's getting off topic, and I do need to watch myself. And not in a good way. Back to topic. When it comes to inflection, there are two techniques that a language can use to put information into a word. One is agglutination, having different parts of a word reserved for different bits of information, gluing them together. The other is fusion, which is when those different bits of information can fuse together into a single inflection. Bangla is, as mentioned, a fusional language, although it is much less synthetic than Sanskrit. Mostly, these inflections are suffixes, but occasionally the vowel in the stem may change as well. This is called vowel harmony, or ablaut, I forget which one, and it is a big feature when it comes to verbs. Actually, let's talk about the grammar now in more detail. Thankfully for us, Bangla Grammar, or Bakaron as we say, puts every word into a couple of categories depending on whether or not it is inflected, shop by pod and op by pod. Before we go any further, pod is just the role any word does in a sentence. It's what we would call parts of speech in English. Both of these split further into a few categories. Important to note, this is only for Bangla. Some of these would be in the other category if we were discussing another language. Let's start with the shop by pod. A bishesho is what we could call a noun. It's anything you can name. In fact, there are some languages where the words for name and noun are identical. Next is bisheshon pod, which is kind of what we would call an adjective, but not really. See, in Bangla, bisheshon pod applies to a word that describes any other word, or even a phrase or an entire sentence. There are two main subcategories depending on what they describe. Nam bisheshon is one that describes nouns and pronouns. Now this is what we would call an adjective. On the other hand, bhab bisheshon corresponds to our adverb, which can be used to describe verbs,
Obviously.
but also adjectives, prepositions, and basically anything else. Next is shorbonam, which is what we call a pronoun, which to avoid repetition takes the place of a noun to avoid repetition, to make sure you're not constantly repeating yourself. By the way, I am shirtless today. Did I ever mention that? These three groups can be listed under the umbrella term nampad, what we would call nominals. Basically anything that shares qualities with nouns. The last one in this category is kriyapad, which is simple, it's the verb. I say simple, but when we get to it, you're gonna see that it's not so simple. As Julie put it,
I would use the word ouch.
as mentioned, these are the groups that undergo inflection, what in Bangla is called vibhakti, which is split further into two categories: nam vibhakti, which the nam pod go through, and kriya vibhakti, which the kriya pod go through. We call these declension and conjugation. There are different factors that affect inflections. For declension, it would be things like gender, case, number, and for conjugation, things like tense, mood, voice. Not all of them are too important in Bangla, I just mentioned all of them to mess with you. Getting back to the synthetic analytic thing, remember languages typically use both of these approaches to different extents. Let's take these examples from English. You can see both in action. In Bangla, when we use a helping word, with or without an inflection, we call that অনুসর্গ. We can divide it further depending on what exactly it's helping with, but for now this is as far as we'll go. There are two other ones in this category, সংযোজক পদ and আবেগসূচক পদ. They're both quite easy, conjunctions and interjections. Interjections, by the way, are less words and more just sounds that express your emotions, like when you stub your toe,
Ouch.
or remember that I'm shirtless. It's like speaking an emoji. Anyways, unfortunately, it's time to put our shirts back on. Until next time when we begin looking at nouns. I'll see you then. Take care.